Sales are easy. It's making the call that's hard. Hi, my name is Dave Gallegos. I've spent the last 25 years in the mortgage industry and a lifetime in sales. In this show, I'll bring that experience, expertise, and the experts I've met to you with actionable advice to improve your sales. It's not magic. You just make the call. Welcome back to Make the Call. This is episode number 10. Man, we're up to 10 episodes. That's pretty cool. I'm pretty proud of that, given that most episodes don't get past one or two. So I guess I can quit talking about that because we're going to keep going. Anyway, thanks for joining today. And we're on the subject of sales call reluctance or call reluctance. And today we're going to talk about, last episode, we talked about what it looks like and where it comes from and why we have it and how lucky I was in my first sales position, how I was able to, I got immune to sales call reluctance because of the situation that I got put in. And I was so young. I think part of it, and reflecting back on that episode, that I was so young, I was too naive to think of anything other than I just want to make another call. But what a powerful mindset that I was able to develop and I wasn't doing this on purpose. I mean, this powerful mindset was inflicted on me because I was really young and really hungry, too dumb to know the difference. And I had this limited window of opportunity to make calls. So they created this scarcity around the time that I had available, which made me super hungry. Now, how can we do that for ourselves? Like, that's really going to be something that we're worth exploring as we go forward in this discussion. So today we're going to talk about understanding why we have sales call reluctance and what it looks like. The first thing to understand about why we have sales call reluctance is just our minds are programmed to avoid unpleasant things, right? And rejection is unpleasant. So you have to it takes courage to face rejection and be rejected, right? And so that's the first thing. Our brains are wired for this. So the first thing that you need to do, and remember that I said this on the last episode, that I have been in sales, professional sales for 40 plus years, and I've never met anybody that doesn't have some sales call reluctance of some kind. I had call reluctance picking up that phone in that business the first time. And I mean, we didn't do enough role playing. We didn't do enough training for me to have anything other than I had a written script in front of me and I had to get that script out and go to the next call. Right. And so, but the practice and the repetition, and I think the low level of expense associated with every one of those calls, I mean, it was on the job training for sure. We try to take a more proactive approach here at Zenith, at my company. We try to take a more proactive approach in the training, but we can certainly improve. But the first thing to understand is that your brain is wired for that. Your brain is wired to avoid a negative event. And our brains are always on the look. It's what our brains are designed for. That's why we ignore the beautiful sunset when we're in traffic and we're paying attention to the gory accident on the side of the road, right? And it's why all the news media and internet trolling and clickbait and all leads with, like, if it bleeds, it leads, right? What they mean by that is like the gory accident is going to get more eyeballs, that the horrible situation is going to get more attention than the positive situation. Our brains are wired for the negativity. And so if we know we're going to pick up the phone and make a call and we could get rejected, our brains are telling us, avoid that behavior that you're going to get hung up on. It might be ugly. It might be, is it John Wayne who said that? Courage is being afraid and doing it anyway. And so that's really what it comes down to in sales. That's the honest to God's truth, is that you're going to be afraid. So if you're trying to if you think that there must be something wrong with you because you're afraid to make a sales call, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, your brain is wired for that. The clue is in what I was doing back when I was 19 or 20 years old. The clue is man, I just made a bunch of calls and I didn't care about the hangups. I didn't like, God, that guy hung up on me. I don't know if I want to call anybody else. It was like, I have to get off this phone in 20 minutes and it was straight commission job, right? So I was only going to get paid if I sold something. So that's the first thing to understand, is that sales call reluctance is our brain avoiding rejection. And we all have, I don't know if it's fair to say we all have a fear of rejection. We all just don't like rejection. And so I guess we're afraid of it because we don't like it and we want to avoid it. But that's the first step. Probably the second thing that is a source or a cause of our sales call reluctance is we don't have confidence in our knowledge of what it is we're doing. And so without that confidence, then when you pick up the phone to call somebody and you're not confident in the value that you're providing and your deep understanding and knowledge of what it is you're doing and how to do it at a high level. And at first, when you're in a new sales role and when you're in a new sales career and you're selling a product maybe that you haven't sold before, that's understandable. And the only way to overcome that is to dive deep and know what you're selling. So you have to study, you have to put in the time, right? You have to put in the time and the effort to know that you have, so that you can gain the confidence that you need, so that when it comes time to pick up the phone and make a call, you're confident in your approach. If you lack that confidence, you're going to have more fear because you're going to think that somebody's going to ask you a question that you're not going to be able to answer. And then that's going to lead to rejection because you don't have an answer to that question. We can talk about how to answer questions that, when somebody has a question for you, you don't know the answer to, how to answer with confidence, because that's a critical skill set. But that's the second thing, is that you don't have confidence in the amount of knowledge that you have about the product that you're selling. So that's another, why we have sales call reluctance. I would say then the third area that causes sales call reluctance is that you haven't done enough. And I gotta be careful how I say this because this is where a lot of people get hung up, but you haven't done a good enough job of putting yourself in a position where you're comfortable calling the person that you're calling, right? So that could be how you've pre-qualified them in your mind, like based on the research that you've done. And that's where I say I have to be careful how I say it, because I've seen people spend forever doing research and never picking up the phone. I got to do more research. I got to study some more about this person and everything else. And that's not true either. But if you have no knowledge and if you're doing a straight on cold call, it's 2024, people. You do not have to cold call anybody. You can create a level of awareness of who you are and what you're doing in advance of making a sales call with almost everybody on the planet through the use of pre-stalking somebody on social media, and, a professional pre-stalking, not anything weird, where you're just delving into somebody's background, where they've been and what they're doing, so that by the time you call them, you can have a level of familiarity with them. I was doing, think about the cold calling I was doing back in 1979 and 1980, where I'm calling Bob's Body Shop and asking for Bob. And here's everything I know about Bob's Body Shop. The guy's name, whoever started it, his name was Bob. And I know nothing else. So I'm like, literally, I don't even know if Bob still owns the place. And I'm asking for Bob. I mentioned how, you always got, Bob sold the business to me. I'm Dave. And they hung up on you after that because they knew it was a telemarketer and they knew it was somebody who didn't know anything about the person. So I always hated that. And if it didn't have somebody's name on it, you're asking for the owner. Right. So talk about telegraphing a sales call, right, in advance. Like you can't, but that doesn't have to happen in our business today. In real estate and mortgage sales, you can know something about the person that you're calling. You can get a warm introduction. You can have a warm co-reference. In other words, somebody that knows them and you can reference that person when you make that call. So you can definitely, but having done no research, that creates a higher level of call reluctance. And then probably the last thing that creates a lot of the call reluctance activity is you just haven't practiced how you're going to say this. You haven't scripted it, right? And you haven't written a script that you're comfortable with, that you have practiced over and over again, that you can recite without reading. And that's one of the biggest things I think a lot of salespeople struggle with, is they don't like the idea of being scripted, which is crazy. If you're a professional salesperson, man, the best professionals on the planet are scripted at everything they do. Look at professional athletes and look at professional teams. what they do and the practice that they go through as they're practicing a play over and over and over again until they get the play down perfectly. So what makes you think in sales that you shouldn't practice that much so that you're that skilled and that gifted and that polished when you make that phone call? You don't want to be overly polished where it sounds fake, but I'm talking about where you're so polished it sounds completely natural and you're able to put whoever you're talking to at complete ease, and you deliver whatever information you're trying to deliver in your conversation with them with the highest level of professionalism and confidence and competence that makes that person go like, man, I'd like to work with you. All of those factors. So we don't like to be rejected. We don't understand the product that we're selling very well. We don't understand the value that we bring. We haven't done a good job of researching who the people are that we're calling. We're not practiced enough. We haven't practiced and role played. None of this is something that you can't do. That's the beauty of it. And so if you really want to target call reluctance, then address those things, right? First of all, understand the fear of rejection and what it is your brain's doing, because there's strategies and tactics to overcome that. And, the number one strategy to overcome that fear of rejection is to make a lot of calls and just get numb to it. So back to my story, I didn't care. Like I had to make more calls because I was going to get thrown off the phone at 40 minutes. And so one of the strategies that you can employ when it comes to making your own sales calls is to see how many dials you can get in a given amount of time, see how many conversations you can have, see how many appointments that you can set, and give yourself a limited time to set them. Probably one of the things you can do is elicit a coworker that you guys can compete with each other and just go, okay, we're going to see who can set the most appointments between now and noon, and the loser buys the winner lunch, right? And so that kind of thing. So create that level of urgency around the number of calls that you need to try to make in a given time frame. Do a great job of researching who you're calling, right? Make sure that you have done everything that you can in your power within the limits of what you can do to create a little more of a warm up to that lead. You can create a relationship with somebody online just by communicating with them a little bit before you make a call, and that would definitely warm it up. Have a good, solid, deep understanding of the product that you're selling so that you have confidence and you sound confident and you know it. When you know, then you are more confident, right? And when you know, when you don't know, you're less confident. And right. So that's the deal. And then practice. Gosh, dang. The best teams, you think the Kansas City Chiefs, I gotta hate those guys, but you think the Kansas City Chiefs didn't practice their plays over and over and over again until they run those plays without, same thing with the other team, right? Like, I don't remember who they play. They played the 49ers. The 49ers, and they both at that level are practicing what they're doing, how they're doing it in every possible situation. Do you do that? Could you do that? You absolutely could. So it's about becoming the best professional salesperson that you can possibly become by doing that level of work. And that's the difference, right? So the best performers are really gifted at their craft. So when you watch somebody who's like a really gifted presenter, and I can think of lots of people in our industry, in the real estate industry, in every industry, they seem so smooth and they seem so confident. You think they didn't practice that? Because they did. They practiced it a lot. And therein lies the opportunity to get a lot better at this. So just remember those approaches that you can take to create that. So that's it. That's where it comes from. The why we have sales call reluctance, those are all the reasons. And within all of those reasons are some of the things that you can do to overcome this. But we're going to talk more about overcoming it in later episodes. The next thing that I want to talk about today is what sales call reluctance looks like, right? So here's what it looks like. It looks like I got to do more research before I make the calls. Like I pick up the phone, I make one call, and then I don't have a good process and a good script. I get voicemail. I'm secretly relieved. Does this reference for anybody? Is this tracking? Because I'm laughing because I've experienced it, right? So everybody, remember I said this, all the best salespeople I've ever met have experienced call reluctance at some level. You don't like asking for the business when you do get on the phone with somebody, right? Like you keep dancing around it. You keep doing as much talking. You don't shut up. So if you never ask the question, you can't hear no, right? A lot of people struggle with that. It's a clear sign of call reluctance, what it looks like. It looks like you're avoiding the work, you're avoiding getting on the phone. And what's sad is that, no one's ever, to my knowledge, no one's ever got punched in the mouth by making a sales call. What's sad is what you're giving up by not making sales calls. You're giving up all your dreams. You're giving up the trip. You're giving up the car. You're giving up the house. You're giving up the money. You're giving up the wealth. Like it's all the things that you said you wanted. I don't think anybody gets into sales for any other reason than they want to have an opportunity to be an entrepreneur for themselves. And especially in real estate and mortgage business, where they wanted the opportunity to be as successful as they could be and have no lid on their income. But when they're in the throes of a call reluctance mindset, they're saying no to all of those things that they wanted to accomplish. And that's the tragedy of it. That's the key to this, is that you've got to look at that and decide what you're going to do and address it, because all the things that aren't going to happen from you not making those sales calls are the things that are really detrimental to your success and your career and to fulfillment. And I've said this before a lot. I'm not sure that I've said it on this podcast, but I will tell you that I believe in my heart of hearts that sales is a shitty business to be in when you're not selling. And the reason it's shitty, the reason it's such a tough business when you're not selling is because, especially if you're in a sales slump or whatever, is that your mind, your self-talk is so negative when you're not selling that it just sends you in it spirals down, right? And so when you're not selling, it's a tough business. You're driving home from work and you're like starting to say really nasty things to yourself about yourself. And that's really important that you listen to the words that you're floating around in your head, because you're hearing everything you say, and you got to be really careful what you say to yourself, because you're always listening. And so write that down. That's a great tip. Be careful of things you say to yourself, because you're always listening. But that's where sales gets to be such a tough business, is because we're so hard on ourselves. Our negative self-talk will just make it worse and worse and worse every day, all the time. So you got to overcome that. That's it for today. We're going to wrap this up. We covered, why we have sales call reluctance and what it looks like. We talked a little bit about some of the things that you can do to overcome it, but we're going to dive deep in the next episode or two about how to overcome sales call reluctance. So thanks a lot for listening, everybody. If you liked it, please give this a rating. That would mean so much to me. Also, share this with people who need to hear this message, because I think the message around call reluctance is a really powerful message and can help a lot of people. I hope it's helped you. Thanks for listening. Have an awesome day.
Thank you for listening to Make the Call with Dave Gallegos, brought to you by Zenith Home Loans. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, and share the show with a friend or colleague who would also find value.